Okay, if you're paying any attention to business news right now, I mean, the noise around generative AI, it's just everywhere, right? Every big company seems to be launching pilots, throwing money at it.
Absolutely, promising total transformation. But the reality, what's actually happening inside these large organizations, it's proving to be, well, radically uneven.
Uneven feels like a bit of an understatement, honestly. We've been digging into a stack of sources for today. There's a big new report from MIT, some specific findings from Rockwell Automation focused on manufacturing, and some really crucial workforce analysis, too.
In the picture they paint together, it's definitely not smooth sailing. It's more like a huge performance gap opening up.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to pull all this data together for you, give you a fast, clear sense of what's actually working with GenAI in the enterprise, what's dramatically failing, and why all this turbulence matters, for the whole economy.
And maybe the best place to start, just to jump right in, is that headline statistic from the MIT NANDA report. It's pretty shocking.
Lay it on us.
95%. 95% of generative AI pilots currently running in companies are failing to deliver any measurable impact on the P&L, the profit and loss statement.
Wow. 95% failure.
Huh.
I mean, that's just a devastatingly low return, isn't it? Considering the billions being poured in.
It really is. It suggests pretty strongly that most executives, they're deploying the model, sure, but they are completely missing the strategic mark somehow.
So what's going wrong? Is the tech just not there yet?
Well, that's the interesting part. The MIT researchers are really clear on this. The failure isn't generally because the AI models themselves are bad. The tech, fundamentally, it works.
Okay.
The problem is organizational. It's integrative. They actually call it the learning gap.
The learning gap. Okay. Unpack that a bit. What does that mean for, like, an average company? Is it just bad training for employees?
It goes much deeper than just training. It means companies haven't figured out how to, restructure their teams around the AI or how to properly weave these tools into their existing workflows.
Mhm.
And crucially, they maybe haven't learned how to ask the AI the right specialized questions for their business. You see, generic tools, think like ChatGPT, they're great for individuals because they're flexible.
Right. I use it all the time.
Exactly. But the second you try to scale that kind of tool across a whole enterprise, which has its own unique internal data, its own complex, customized processes that generic system just kind of stalls, the organization itself is often too rigid to adapt to the tool.
Ah, that makes sense. That friction explains a lot. But what about the other side? That tiny 5% that are succeeding? What are they doing differently?
Yeah, that's fascinating. The report points to some examples like young startups, sometimes led by, 19 or 20-year-olds who've seen incredible growth, like $0 to $20 million revenue in just a year.
Wow. How?
They seem to succeed by picking just one specific pain point, one problem, and then executing really well on solving that, often through smart, focused partnerships.
So they're not trying to, like, boil the ocean with AI.
Exactly. They zero in, and that singular focus seems to be something larger enterprises, maybe because of their complexity, struggle to replicate.
And speaking of complexity and maybe misplaced focus,
Mhm.
where are these big companies actually spending their GenAI budgets?
This was another surprising find. More than half, over 50% of the GenAI budgets inside these enterprises are going towards sales and marketing tools.
Okay, trying to boost revenue, I guess.
That seems to be the hope. But the report suggests it might be a strategic error, at least right now, because the biggest measurable ROI, the actual guaranteed value they found, it's kind of hidden away in back office automation.
Back office, like what specifically?
Think about things like eliminating expensive business process, outsourcing contracts, or cutting costs from external agencies. Mundane stuff, maybe, but that's where the guaranteed savings are sitting, often unexploited, while they chase the potentially higher but less certain revenue spikes from marketing.
Huh. So the message for you listening seems pretty clear. Maybe stop chasing that shiny new marketing tool first. Look hard at where you're spending big on operational stuff.
It certainly suggests a potential misalignment of resources.
Right. And this whole question of where to apply the resources, it leads straight into how companies are trying to implement these things.
Yeah.
The whole build versus buy debate.
Yeah, and the data here is overwhelmingly clear. It heavily favors partnerships.
How so?
Well, purchasing tools from specialized vendors or setting up external partnerships to implement GenAI, that approach succeeds about 67% of the time. 2 out of 3 projects actually deliver value.
Okay, 2/3 success rate with partners or vendors. What about the companies trying to build their own AI systems from scratch internally? Especially, in sensitive areas like finance.
They succeed only about one-third as often,
Yeah.
so half the success rate of partnering.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It's a critical point because many large firms, especially in those highly regulated sectors, they persist in trying to build their own proprietary tools. They often cite data security or internal control needs.
Understandable concerns, maybe?
Sure, but the data shows they are far more likely to fail when they go it alone. They keep trying to reinvent the wheel, and honestly, that seems to be a direct contributor to that overall 95% failure rate we started with.
So it sounds like organizational inertia, maybe a bit of not invented here syndrome, is actively leading them down a less successful path. They're choosing failure more often.
The data suggests that might be the case. They hesitate to trust external partners, even when the evidence points that way.
So for that successful 5%, beyond just buying the right tool or partnering, what else are they doing right? What are the key success factors?
You definitely have to look beyond just the tool itself.
Cool.
Some critical factors seem to be empowering the line managers, the people who actually understand the day-to-day workflows, empowering them to drive the adoption.
Instead of just having a central AI lab dictate things.
Exactly. Not just some distant theoretical AI group. And critically, selecting tools that can integrate deeply into existing systems and, importantly, adapt over time. They're not static solutions.
Adapt over time. We're talking about AI that learns.
We are. In fact, the most advanced organizations, they're already moving beyond basic GenAI. They're experimenting with what are called agentic AI systems.
Agentic systems. Okay, that sounds pretty advanced. For a listener, what does that mean in practice? What can they do?
Think of it like the AI having its own sort of short-term memory. It can understand a goal, break it down into steps, and then execute that multi-step project more independently without needing a human to guide every single action.
So it can learn, remember, act more autonomously.
Precisely. It's a big leap beyond just generating text or images on command. But, of course, this increasing capability also fuels that challenge of shadow AI.
Right, where employees just start using powerful tools like advanced chatbots on their own, bypassing official IT channels.
Exactly, which makes it incredibly difficult for the company to actually measure the true impact, positive or negative, on productivity or security.
This all points to a really seismic shift needed within organizations. We actually found this one anecdote. It really illustrates the intense pressure leaders are under to force this change through. Eric Vaughn, the CEO of Ignite Tech.
Oh yeah, the AI Monday story.
Tell us about that.
Well, he mandated this thing called AI Monday. On Mondays, staff were basically forbidden from doing their normal work, no customer stuff, no budget stuff. They had to focus only on AI implementation projects.
Just AI, all day Monday.
Yeah. Vaughn apparently saw GenAI not just as some tool for optimization, but as an existential transformation for the business, a matter of survival.
Okay, so that's a pretty strong stance. What happened when, presumably, not everyone got on board immediately?
Well, the consequence was stark. The report indicates he ended up replacing nearly 80% of his staff within about a year.
80%. Wait, is that presented as like visionary leadership driving transformation, or is it more like managerial panic facing huge disruption?
The source presents it more as an illustration of the kind of harsh speed and decisiveness that some leaders feel is necessary now. It really highlights this binary choice they perceive: transform rapidly or risk being left behind entirely.
Even if that transformation fractures the traditional workforce structure almost overnight.
That seems to be the implication.
Which, that abrupt fracturing, it leads us perfectly into the broader impacts on the labor market, right? Because the immediate hit seems concentrated.
Yes, very much so. Customer support roles, administrative positions, often the very jobs that were frequently outsourced in the past, those seem to be feeling the pressure first.
And how is that pressure showing up? Is it mass layoffs?
Interestingly, not primarily through mass layoffs across the board, at least not yet according to this analysis. The key mechanism right now seems to be companies simply not backfilling positions when people leave.
Ah, so attrition combined with automation.
Exactly. It's a quieter, more subtle reshaping of the corporate structure, but it's happening consistently.
Okay, so that's the impacts on some office roles. Let's pivot now, look at the industrial sector. Manufacturing. They're facing a whole different set of pressures, according to that Rockwell automation report.
They really are. For manufacturers, cybersecurity has suddenly shot way up their list of concerns. It's now ranked as the top external risk, right behind inflation and general economic uncertainty.
Cybersecurity. Why such a sudden jump for manufacturers?
Well, think about modern manufacturing. It relies heavily on connected devices, industrial control systems, what we call operational technology or OT. These aren't just computers in an office, they run the actual machines.
Like the robots, the assembly lines.
Exactly. And these OT systems are becoming increasingly connected, making them targets. And an attack here isn't just about leaking data, it could physically shut down production.
Or worse, cause actual physical damage or safety incidents. That's a different level of risk than typical IT security.
It absolutely is. So manufacturers are now urgently turning to AI tools, not just for efficiency, but specifically to try and manage this escalating, potentially dangerous cyber risk against their OT systems.
And this highlights something else interesting, this blurring line between IT and OT security, which used to be totally separate worlds.
Completely separate. But now, the Rockwell report found that about 1/3 of manufacturing leaders actually hold responsibilities that span both IT and OT cybersecurity.
One person covering both. That's a huge remit.
It is. And almost half, 48% of the cybersecurity professionals they surveyed identified securing these converged IT-OT architectures as the absolute key to getting positive security outcomes.
But managing that kind of complex, converged environment must require incredibly specialized skills.
No doubt. And that brings us right back to the human capital challenge. We see it again here. Skill shortages, big training challenges, rising labor costs. These are all major hurdles. Finding people with the right analytical and security expertise, especially bridging IT and OT, is a top hiring priority.
So just as automation is changing some roles, the need for highly specialized human talent in other areas, like security, is actually increasing.
Right, but this is happening just as the sort of overall labor foundation seems to be showing some cracks. Which brings us to that final piece of analysis we looked at, the one highlighting a potential strategic failure.
Yeah, this one was really striking. It focused on the economic implications of almost 300,000 Black women exiting the U.S. labor force just this year.
Which is a really profound shift. Katika Roy, in her analysis, points out something critical. Black women have historically had the highest labor force participation rate among all women in America.
So a cornerstone of the workforce, historically.
Absolutely. A crucial part of the economic engine. So when you have automation hitting those administrative and support roles disproportionately, and simultaneously you see a foundational, highly participating group like this strategically withdrawing from the labor market, well, the impact is potentially huge.
How so? What are the downstream effects?
It goes directly to things like the corporate succession pipeline, future innovation capacity, and overall economic growth potential. You're losing experienced talent and future leaders at a critical time.
It really underscores this complex dynamic, doesn't it? Companies are sort of obsessing over getting their GenAI pilots right and mostly failing. Remember that 95% rate?
Right, struggling with the operational side.
While at the exact same time, they're facing these deep strategic crises in their human capital structure, both from automation pressures and these significant demographic exits.
The multi-front challenge.
Okay, so let's try and bring all these threads together then.
Yeah.
If we synthesize everything we've dug into, the core challenge with GenAI right now, it's clearly not the AI models themselves. The tech basically works.
Right. The failure, that staggering 95% failure rate, it seems almost purely organizational.
Driven by what? Things like that internal learning gap, the inability to integrate tools effectively.
Organizational inertia, yeah. And this really costly preoccupation, it seems, with trying to build proprietary AI systems in-house.
When the data clearly shows that strategic partnerships and buying specialized tools are far, far more successful, like twice as successful.
Exactly. So that really leads us to the final kind of provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Go for it.
Okay, so we've established that the biggest, most demonstrable economic value from GenAI right now seems to be hiding in operational efficiency, specifically cutting those big, expensive outsourcing contracts and streamlining back office costs.
Right, the guaranteed savings.
Yet organizations are braining vast amounts of time, money, and resources on failed internal builds, trying to reinvent the wheel. And they're doing this while simultaneously facing a deepening strategic crisis in human capital, partly due to these demographic exits we just discussed.
Okay.
So the question is, what is the actual economic cost of this organizational inertia? The cost of clinging to the build-it-ourselves mentality when the data overwhelmingly points towards external solutions for achieving those crucial efficiency gains.
And maybe, what's the tipping point? What will it take for that 95% running failing pilots to finally say, okay, this isn't working, abandon the go-it-alone strategy, and pivot towards the focused partnered adoption that seems to deliver results?
Because how quickly they make that pivot, that strategic shift, could really define the next phase of competition and growth in the global economy.